Task, measuring your social value. We'll be providing two examples using the two models that we discussed on the previous slides. So the TOMS model, so the themes, outcomes and measures model, and the SVI, the social value international calculation models, which is also the social return on investment model, SROI. So using the TOMS model, so the themes, outcomes and measures, which is an economic proxy model. So it literally gives you the economic value of your social value. And this is really useful for generally public sector commissioners when they want to see or when they want to attribute a value to the social value that you're creating. And this really determines or tells commissioners how much policy aligned social value did you deliver or will you deliver through the program or the activity that you're doing. And as previously mentioned, it's typically used by local authorities, housing associations, NHS, public sector and in public sector tenders. So generally public sector. And again, this is really about how can they attribute a value, a financial or economic value to the outcomes that you are delivering through your social impact. So it's a really simple model. So TOMS assigns a fixed value per unit of activity. So the step one will typically be you select a relevant TOMS outcome. So for this example, we'll look at the theme of employment and skills. And this carries on from the previous example that we used in part one. The outcome, more people into work, and the measure, number of people supported into employment for a 12-month period. So the step two to that would be how do you apply a TOMS financial model to that? So a typical TOMS proxy would be one person's into sustained employment could range from anything between 16,000 and 25,000. So you will either have the commissioner that will itemize this on their social value and say, well, actually, we want X amount of value, or they may stipulate that they want a certain type of, whether it's apprenticeships, full-time, part-time, job retention, job creation, whatever it is. And so you would then look at the type of jobs that you would create and then look at a market value typical for that job type and your salary for that type of job. So it's important that you don't overclaim or overstate and that you have a reference point of how you've come to that figure. And so usually a bit of research in terms of industry knowledge and industry standards and industry practice of relatively what is that value that's attributed to that economic, to that theme or that outcome essentially. So in this instance, one person into sustained employment would range from a salary between 16,000, and 25,000. And so again, just do your research and find out what that middle ground is, or whether it's at the 16,000 or whether it's at the 25,000. So we're going to use for the context of this exercise, 18,000 as a conservative value. It may be more, it may be less. And so if within that, so for instance, the commissioner says they want 10 people into employment, but you may be able to deliver more, but 10 is the benchmark that they've requested. You will typically times that or multiply that number by the economic value that you've attributed to that. So in this case, we would look at 10 people into employment at a salary or economic value, shall I say, at £18,000. And so when you times that, that's £180,000 worth of social value that you can claim against using the TOMS model. And again, just to reiterate, this is quite standard practice in public sector. It's a model that the public sector use. So unless they've stated otherwise, this is generally how you would calculate social value using the TOMS model. Measuring your social value, frequently asked questions. What is the TOMS model? Well, in short, the TOMS model stands for Themes, Outcomes and Measures. It's a standardized framework used to measure and report the social value created by contracts and projects. It assigns fixed monetary values to specific outcomes, making it easier to quantify impact. Question 2, how do I select the right TOMS outcome? You should choose the themes, e.g. employment and skills, and then the specific outcome that matches your activity, e.g. more people into work. The measure defines how you count success, such as the number of people supported into employment for 12 months, etc. And this goes back to when we looked at the bingo in terms of, well, what social value do you do really well that you're already doing and that aligns with your operations? So you're not creating new social values just for the sake of it that you can't deliver. This is what you're already doing. So again, this should almost fit into your organization quite seamlessly because you're not creating something new. You essentially are doing more of what you've already done or what you can do because of how your business operates, because of how you set up, or maybe the industry or the sector that you're in. Job creation, once given the opportunity to do so, it might be slightly more easier in your organization. But I would always say pick the outcomes that you do well. And then if later on you want to evolve that and start bringing in new ones, then that's totally fine. But also make sure that they align with what the commissioner or the commissioning organisation is looking for as well. How is the financial value applied? Tom's is quite a simple model. It is literally just attributing a financial proxy to or value um, to that theme, as it was, or the outcome. So in short, each Tom's outcome has a typical proxy value. And in this case, we gave an example of between 16 and 25,000. So we landed on 18,000 per person into sustained employment. You multiply that number by the number of units achieved by the chosen financial proxy to calculate the social value. Conservative values are often recommended for reporting. So again, this goes back to one of the main principles of the social value is not to overcount and not to overclaim. Can Tom's values vary? Yes, in short, Tom's provide a range for each outcome. You can choose a conservative, typical, or optimistic value depending on your reporting approach. Always document your choice for transparency and where practical and where you've got that figure from. So it's always good practice, maybe do a bit of research and see what the market dictates in regards to a financial proxy so that at least you've got some form of benchmark that you can rely upon. Um, and finally, are adjustments like deadweight or attributions needed in TOMS? So unlike SROI, the standard TOMS model already assumes proxy values reflect net benefits. So additional adjustments for deadweight, attribution, or displacements are not usually applied. However, if your project has unique circumstances, you may include them separately, but typically it's not the norm, it's more of an exception than the rule. But you'll find that those attributing those adjustments really apply in the SROI or Social Value International model or the SROI model, which is Social Return on Investment model, which you will learn more on the other slides. So I hope you found how to measure your social value slides part 2 useful. Next up, we'll be looking at how to leverage your social value. So now that you understand what it is, how to calculate it, now it's how do you use it? How do you practically, what are some of those practical steps you can take to actually leverage and use that social value?